On my phone.
Walker.
If you just tap to join. Oh,
You're so
Great.
we're live.
All right, everybody, welcome. Welcome to the TIA's Technovations 2025 live event, basically focused on Technovations itself and what is the ROI? What's in it for you? So welcome. Welcome to this event, and I'm going to be a co-host along with Brian Roy and a couple other esteemed members of the Technology Committee, as well as a member of our Vendor Advisory Council. First of all, let me go ahead and take care of some housekeeping as we typically do for any of our TIA events. Which is our TIA antitrust and confidentiality statements. Discussion, comments, and presentations during TIA functions must not refer to any past, present, or future rates, prices, or anything related thereto. Include any reference to marketing strategies, include any discussion of boycotts of any person, product, or firm, or inhibit any members, employees from discussing employment with other member companies. Things you hear during the meeting that are confidential and private to TIA should not be shared publicly without its prior consent or used against or in competition with the TIA. So with that being said, we got that out of the way. Let's go ahead and start. Brian, I'll throw it to you.
Great, thanks, Ryan. So as Ryan mentioned, who we've assembled today is a small representation of what the TIA Technology Committee has. We meet all year long as a committee, as part of the TIA, and we discuss a lot of things, but towards the beginning of the year and all the way up until right before the show, we spend a considerable amount of time working on curating this show, and we go through and as a committee look at the vendors, discuss the challenges, but I think one of the biggest values that we can bring to this is that we've all been attendees to many of the shows, and I think we all look at this as our opportunity to have an influence into the ROI that we get out of it, and in turn to TIA and its members. And so I think, as we go through this today, just keep in mind that it isn't just the TIA or some marketing department that puts this together. It is people that are in the seats that go to these shows that expect to bring back an ROI to their organization, and we have a lot of influence in how this goes. So the TIA, the Tech Committee, is made up of quite a diverse group of people, all with technology roles. But we have some of the smaller companies, some of, like ourselves, we're just less than a 5-year-old company. And we also have a representative from the largest of those companies. And so it'd be pretty easy for me to hand the baton here to Cody. And just from her perspective, being in the role that she's in, how do you talk about ROI and coming to a show like this, and how do you see that?
Yeah, so thanks, Brian. I think from an ROI perspective, where we struggle with kind of laying out that case to our teams or to get approval for spend really is like, you think, oh, well, you're going to a conference, and so you're going to be, out meeting people, and you're going to be traveling, and are you really going to get any work done? How do you justify the cost of that expense, right? And we all know that there's not a whole bunch of extra money floating around these days at any of our companies. And so making sure that the money that you spend is worth it, the time that you spend away from your desk is worth it, and proving that back to leadership can really make a case for why you should attend. And so, some things that we talk about on our team has to do with, I ask my team members actually to put together their own ROI for why that they plan on coming, and look at the agenda, see what sessions you're going to attend. How do you think about, just at a high level, like how do you think about applying that to our business? What can I expect when you come back? How are you going to share those learnings with the team? Really helps me I'm on the tech committee. Obviously, I think this is a great thing to do, but I can't send everyone, right? We can't send somebody's got to hold down the shop. So just making sure that my team is really clear about how they intend to use it helps me as a manager feel like, okay, I'm comfortable writing that check.
Excellent. Yeah, Paul, Sarah, and anything to add with that one?
Yeah, I think one of the most beneficial things that we justify, biggest ROI for us is verification, validation. Right now, the industry is rapidly evolving in the tech space. I think Kevin will be able to attest to that on the vendor side. Of there's opportunity everywhere to partner with a new vendor, to tap into a new AI resource. That can be incredibly overwhelming. I think right now my team's biggest constraint is focus. So being able to go to a space where everyone's collaborating, there are people using the same tech stacks as you, coming from the same brokerage model as you, and being able to validate the problems you're solving and how, and then building those relationships to lean on throughout the rest of the year, then reinforce year in and year out that's been huge for us and our ability to move fast.
Yeah, I like that, Sarah. You mentioned the relationship piece of it too, and building into that. I mean, it's easy for us on the committee. We've all formed tremendous bonds and are able to discuss a lot of topics off the air and whatnot. But I believe Technovations, which is again November 5th through the 7th in Phoenix, it gives you an opportunity not just to see the technology, but to have those meaningful relationships. A lot of these other conferences are a lot larger. And I think one of the things I love, the ROI I get from Technovations, is the fact that I can have a one-on-one conversation with that developer, with that owner, and with each other to see what the biggest benefit would be for the organization. Kind of building off of also what Cody said. Paul, do you have anything to add, or Kevin?
Yeah, I would definitely, building off everything you all said, one of the biggest things I've got from the Technovation conferences is, Brian, you mentioned that all of us are different size companies, right? So whether you're a smaller brokerage, a larger brokerage, coming in at somewhat as a smaller brokerage, when I first came in, we kind of got to hear what others went through, right? They kind of went this route. It kind of guided us to know, should we go down that route? Should we not? And that network building was tremendous for us, because it's not only the connections you're making with the vendors, but also within the industry. We always say it, we're all in this together. And we all want to find the best solution for our needs so we can help each other. And that's been a huge ROI for me from these conferences.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Paul. Like, I just think that intimate setting where you're not all lost, you're sort of all positioned in one general location with Technovations. You know that everybody there is there for the same reason, versus going to a bigger show or one that focuses on all of supply chain. And I think every conference these days has some aspect of technology, but this one's all technology. Like, we're just not talking about anything else. We're not talking about marketing. We're not talking about modes of transportation that don't necessarily reflect, but it also just means that you could just kind of look to your left or to your right and know that you meet somebody there. But I also think that has a strong tie to the vendors, and you just get more face time with the vendors. And you mentioned this, Paul, like, how do you feel like you position yourself when you're going into this thing and with the vendors? What's your agenda there, and do you feel like you've been able to have adequate time with them to really go through this?
Yeah, so with the vendors, at times doing everything through emails back and forth and trying to set up quick demos, not at the conference. At times with your busy work schedule, it can kind of seem a little bit more transactional, but that personal setting we get at the conference, you really get a feeling if there's a partnership to build with the vendors. And through going through these conferences, we kind of get to expose a little bit more of, hey, this is the issue we're truly dealing with. We may be on this TMS system. Maybe they're trying to get integrated better, and we can share more that tribal knowledge with each other. But further than that, there's been countless times at conferences meeting with vendors saying, well, we were thinking about doing this. How would that look in your system, right? And we can start brainstorming on the spot. So it's a little bit of an easier conversation, easier flow versus those scheduled timeframes saying, hey, we got a demo, we got another demo to do, right? So it's definitely helped build that partnership relationship with vendors versus just, yeah, I like your tool, let's get it and set it and forget it, right? We want to grow a partnership. So that's been the big thing with the vendor relationships at these conferences.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for filling in. Paul, you've watched one of our subcommittees start up with the VAC. I know we've invited Kevin Coons, who's on the VAC and has been a friend of the tech committee for quite some time. And Kevin, how do you feel this show stacks up, and what do you prepare coming to a show like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great evolution, I think, with Technovations. I actually think I've been to every Technovations. I think going back, I've been there now on the tech side for a while. I was there as a consultant before and as a freight provider. So I've actually been on all sides of it. But I think, I mean, Paul kind of hit it on the head. Sarah mentioned a little bit. I think with the evolution of freight tech in particular, right, and with the way that the vendors have kind of changed, adjusted, right, there's been some consolidation where some companies have gotten acquired. There's been other situations where there's new tech providers that are doing radically different things. I think there's kind of two components to that as you kind of prepare and go in. And like, one is the educational component. So it's just understanding the shifts, not only like what the new tech is and what's out there and, what I should buy and what I shouldn't, but like also just like the direction of technology in our industry, right? Understanding, where we're headed, right? What is the next thing that's going to change how brokerage operates, right? Obviously, Cody's at the forefront of this at CH because they do a lot of this internally. But for a lot of the smaller and medium-sized brokerages, it's like it can be really hard to see that, right? Unless you're out there, unless you're talking to people. So I think that's a huge piece of Technovations and the focus on technology in terms of the educational sessions and that thing. The other piece, though, is kind of what Paul mentioned as well, as those relationships. I think there's a huge trust factor that's growing in terms of acquiring freight tech. It's not just get on a demo, it works, it's good, let's move on. Especially with you look at like a lot of the automation and the AI and that sort of stuff. These are like fundamental changes in the way that you operate your business. So you better really trust that freight tech provider, that they're going to provide what they actually are selling to you and that they're actually promising to you. And so I think that gives you a really good opportunity to dive a little deeper when you're at a show like Technovations. Like was already mentioned, it's a little bit smaller, it's a little more intimate. A lot of times the freight tech providers, you'll get to meet, and Ryan mentioned this, you'll get to meet the CTO, the chief product officer, or whatever, the people that are actually in charge of the tech, that are actually driving the innovation. It's not just like some salesperson trying to sell you. So there's a lot of questions that you can get answered. There's a lot of relationship that you can build there so that when you do go out and acquire these technologies, you can feel a little bit better about the people that you're doing business with, right? And the direction that you're headed. So I think there's like a couple of pieces there that are kind of crucial to what Technovations provides versus, a lot of other conferences.
One of the things I think that everybody thinks about with Technovations, what to expect is new technology, as you mentioned, Kevin. But for Sarah, question for you, getting that exposure to new technology, what kind of things should attendees, what should they expect? What should they be looking for? What should they be excited about this year?
Yeah, so it's been really exciting actually being part of planning all of that now, not just attending it. There, I think, are three primary venues that we've curated for the broker attending, right? And for the vendors as well to participate. First is the vendor showcase, and that builds on these relationships we've been talking about. It's a platform to meet the vendors you're vetting, or maybe you've heard about on LinkedIn, and ask them the questions. And I think another aspect of that is, at least it's highly beneficial for me isn't just meeting the vendor and building relationships with them, it's meeting their other customers. It can be really difficult when you're vetting a new product unless you happen to have an opportunity already to be connected in the brokerage space to find people who are using it. People who are willing to have that side conversation and be honest with you about how it might line up with your brokerage model, because that really impacts too the viability of a product for you and your teams. So that's huge as the vendor showcase. Second is the education sessions. Those are both broker led and vendor guided conversations about the real problems we're trying to solve. Now that I know about the AI agents calling and bidding on freight, and I know that I can use things to process documents, how do I actually use that to help my teams on the floor? That's a huge part of it. And last is Shark Tank. I think that's probably our flashiest event we have. It's always fun to see who we bring into that. And those are just vendors who have, are newer to the space or just really starting to take off, providing a venue for them to, pitch themselves not only to the crowd, but to a special panel of people we've selected. And that's, I think, the part of Technovations. It's not just about keeping up with what's happening, it's what's going to happen. So you're going to get tons of opportunities facilitated for you, but there's just insurmountable value too in the conversations that happen in between each of those events, the people you bump into and the relationships you start.
Great perspective, Sarah. And Cody, I would love to hear from you too. And in terms of, running into situations where you're maybe evaluating new tools or vendors, Technovation maybe providing you that insight in real time. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think for us, it's been, there's two things that I think of when we talk about like what we're looking forward to and then how we think about vendor selection, right? We've talked a lot about getting to meet the people that are reaching out to you, getting to really like ask them serious questions. I use this time for business reviews for vendors that we've had for a long time. So like, let's sit down and go over our business. Let's do a QBR. Let's do a monthly business review because we're all here. So I use it to get a bunch of meetings slammed into a very short time frame so that we're not having to work around schedules. We all know we're going to be in the same place at the same time. So from a vendor, just ongoing vendor relationship management standpoint, I think it's super valuable for that. For me, one of the things that I love the most is the Technovator showcases. And part of that is because I get, and I feel this way, it's not just too dissimilar from Capital Ideas when we do the media day part, where you sit there for 4 hours, 3 hours at Capital Ideas, and you get all of these rapid fire like snippets of what's going on. Technovator showcases that times 4 or 5 sections of it, right? And so you get these nice condensed timeframes. And there's a ton of vendors that are launching new products through that platform. Like this is the first time they're bringing something to market. And you can sit there and just like gather all that intel and all of that information in these nice short bites that makes it really, really efficient to evaluate kind of what's going on in the marketplace. The other thing I would add that I was really interested in being on the committee and kind of watching education sessions come in and stuff like that. Like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, it was all, what is this AI thing and how might I use it and what is happening? This year, it's so cool to see like, here is how we're using it in real life. And here is how like a real life application of what we're doing inside of our business, either with these vendors or on our own. And like, it's so cool to just watch that evolution happen and be able to like kind of take in, like Sarah said, all of it at once and go, okay, what's going on over here? Who's doing what? So that's just, from a vendor standpoint, huge. Obviously seeing all of our broker friends, also super fun and huge, but really gathering all of that kind of lay of the land is absolutely well worth our time.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's great. For some of us that have been here for years, Kevin mentioned probably being at all of them.
All of them.
All of us at one time were first-time attenders, and it's a little daunting at first. But this is an opportunity to welcome everybody. And TIA is always gracious enough to give scholarships, so we know that there's first-time attenders. We've heard that there's a bunch of new first-time attenders, and I think that just kind of speaks to the landscape that we've all been talking about here, which is you have to be in front of this to really get a feel for how I'm going to bring this back to our company and how I'm going to make this technology work. And so, I guess Sarah and Paul, can you guys kind of speak to what it feels like to be first-time attenders? How do you look at them for their very first show and make sure that they maximize that ROI?
For me, yes, like we talked about, the vendor meetings, the QBRs are really important. But I really lean on building up your brokerage connections to lean on for conversations like this. My biggest advice is reach out to your top tech vendors right now and ask them who they know that's a customer, and reach out to them, see if they want to connect with you. Ask them how they're doing, what they're thinking of the product, how they're using it. Everyone's going to have different levels of comfort with sharing that information, which makes complete sense. But I just remember my first time going to Technovations, the speed at which I moved after returning was uncomparable, because now I talk at least monthly, if not weekly, to people I met there, validating ideas we're going through, asking them for their opinion on something that's hitting the market. I just you can't quantify the value that's brought to both me and our entire team. That's my thing. Build the relationships, come back every year, foster them. It's how we keep the industry accountable and continue to innovate.
Yeah, and for me, the first time I attended, when I came in, I didn't know all these vendors, right? And as Cody spoke earlier, those showcases really helped guide me to know I'm interested in that product. Let me go to their kiosk. Let me have that deep conversation with them. See if it's a good fit. And then that's where I found out, hey, I can brainstorm with them. We can kind of bounce stuff off of each other. And as Sarah mentioned, at the same time, it's such a good place for networking with other companies that's already using those vendors as well. So my advice is utilize the time you're given, whether the networking events we have, the breaks in between, don't go to a conference just to sit and listen and go back to your room. Use the time. Just like in any tech, we know bad data in, bad data out, right? It's the same here. You put your good time in, you're going to get a lot of value out of it. So that would be my advice. If you don't know all the vendors, watch those showcases, make your list, go out and visit them. Don't make it, I'm going to follow up with them after this conference. They're there now, and take advantage of this time. So that would be my advice for any new attendees.
I appreciate that insight, Paul, and everyone. I remember my first, Technovations. I was such a small fish, is what I felt like, in a big pond. And one of my biggest ROIs from that year was I had one vendor actually introduce me to another vendor who we're now using, and I think is one of our largest ROIs when it comes to moving freight. And I'll never forget that moment. Like, oh, he's like, oh, you haven't talked to them? I'm like, no. Who is it? I'm like, I saw there's a lot of people at their booth. He's like, yeah, let me go and introduce you. I actually left his booth to go and introduce me and get me in front of this other vendor who he thought we would benefit from. Great partner. And I wouldn't have had that partnership if I hadn't had the opportunity to go to Technovations. So there are some immediate ROIs, and right when you first get back, but sometimes those ROIs aren't immediate. So it's about that long-term ROI, that long-term growth that may come from networking and strategy. So, Cody, I'm going to throw it to you again. What have you seen in terms of your experiences at Technovations with that long-term ROI, that big picture outcome?
Yeah. So I think this will be my third or fourth, maybe somewhere around there. And I would say, like, I'm on the technology committee and connected to all of you fine people because of going to Technovations and our good friend Don saying, hey, I think that you would be a great addition to the technology committee. Is that something you're interested in? I met Sarah because I had been on stage at Technovations, and she walked up to me afterwards and said, I would love to meet you. I really love what you said up there. I have a story about how we've met all of you. And the ability to like text Brian Roy on a Tuesday and be like, hey, dude, are you seeing this? Like, we are experiencing this, or have you heard of this capability? Do you know what's going on here? Like, the ability to like have a string to pull, it's like a phone, it's like a instant phone a friend, to where I have all of these connections that I've built over time from going to these events, and just having that community has helped me so much. Like, when I have an executive on my team come to me and say, have you ever heard of this vendor or this capability? I can, like, almost every single time I can say yes, and here's what they do, and I know somebody who's using them. Do you want me to put a call in? Like, just that ability to connect things. I think it's helped me feel more connected into the brokerage space. Hopefully it's made me look good. And so it's really hard to replace that by doing it with intention over Zoom or Teams meetings, and like doing all of that homework. Like, I can't stress enough, like, this is the most efficient use of my time to handle all of this in a day and a half, with all of you wonderful people.
Yeah, I think even building off of that, something that I forget about is that customers are watching about who's keeping up with what matters in freight. And our customers have brought up that as a company, we are involved not just in TIA, but specifically Technovations. Lastly, too, it's the value for it is for every brokerage. I think for the newer brokerages trying to get into technology, there is not a better space in the industry to learn and to observe and to meet people and ask questions. For the bigger brokers, the medium-sized brokers, I can't think of a better place to start creating relationships and starting long-term conversations. I really can't imagine doing what I do today if I hadn't gone to Technovations and become obsessed with being here. So
I appreciate that, Sarah. Here's the other ROI that I have, from my personal experience is, once in charge of solely technology within our organization, and now moving into the role of sales, I've had many conversations this last summer with customers saying, hey, would love your insight. Where is the industry going technology? How can we better our partnerships with it, whether it's through automation, AI, or whatever? I've been able to gather, all this information over the years, and through my relationships with everybody on the tech committee, with you guys and others, that I can quite eloquently answer that question to my customers and putting us in a better position. So that's another, I think, added benefit if you're looking to get an ROI out of it from a personal side. It can absolutely launch your career within this industry. And anything? Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was just going to say that, it used to be that going to conferences in our space was a pretty easy thing to justify. And it doesn't hurt that this one's sitting in Phoenix in November. Like, that in and of itself used to draw a lot of people, just regardless of what you got out of it. But I think the reason we wanted to put this together was to showcase how we all generally feel about this conference, and what opportunities are there. And I mean, you guys hit some really big topics out of the park, because it really does. You really can come back through this, as Sarah said, really energized, and you need that. A lot of us, as you go into these final months of the year, it's where we can make an impact from a technology standpoint to prepare for next year. Coming out of October, when everybody's super busy, you can't really make big technology shifts. You've got a little bit of a window for most of us, that we can really affect change. And so sometimes you just need the wind in your sails and come back and really motivated and say, that project that's been sitting out there, I now have the resources that I can do it. I can reach out to people for help. I've met all the vendors. I've met the vendors' peers. You guys have just done a really good job of showcasing the things that we can get there. And so if you come home with that energy, as Sarah said, I really think it'd be hard not to show an immediate ROI on this show.
At the end of the day, if you're watching this and you want to be a part of this and you're not the decision maker for who writes the check for attending, ask that person what the cost is of making a bad tech choice. Because we're all looking at the cost right now. ask yourself what the cost is of making a bad choice and not validating those decisions. And I promise you, it'll be way more expensive than coming to Technovations. So if you want to do that, it is important to actually start clicking the links now. The room reservations are going to close on October 13th. So make sure that you're having those conversations. I don't know if LinkedIn links are connections here, but if you have more questions about how we've gotten value directly out of it, please message me. I'm sure everyone else would agree with that sentiment. But those are my passionate closing thoughts.
I don't know if there's any other better way to end it, right? I mean, I love it, Sarah. You're new to the technology committee, but you are a testament to why everybody should come to Technovations. So with that, unless anybody else has anything else to mention,
Sarah
thank
speaks
you.
for me.
Yeah, she spoke for me too.
Yeah.
And thank you for being here, everyone. Thank you, audience, for joining us today. And we really look forward to seeing everyone at this year's Technovations. Once again, Phoenix, Arizona, JW Marriott, Desert Ridge, November 5th through the 7th. Be there. Click below. We'll see you there. Thank you, everyone. And thanks for our host.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.